welcome. I'm Nick Gibson and I'm joined by Tom Shrive from Ask Porter to talk about interconnectivity. Tom, welcome.
Hi Nick, it's great to be here today. Thanks for having me. Thanks for having me
on. Just to start with, recent reports, we've put something up on the website, recent reports show that less than 40% of companies currently use interconnected tools to measure, manage and control data and processes that are key to their business. Why do you think this is, and what are these companies missing out on?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really interesting question. I mean, ultimately, when we look at the customer, right, the customer doesn't really care about interconnectivity. The customer cares about not having to repeat themselves. They care about proactive follow-ups. They care about quick responses. That's what the customer cares about. They care that when dealing with you as a company, that you get them, you know them, and you can kind of help them with what they want effectively. Long story short, enterprise is failing to deliver on those customer demands at the moment, and I think largely speaking, this is because of a lack of interconnectivity across all of their systems and all of their organizations. They know it. We know it as suppliers into that sector. There are a number of very, very big challenges, I think, that they encounter on a day-to-day basis. It's in effect, what the ideal, that there's a very big difference between a user journey that, let's say, for example, to give you an example from my world, a customer calls up and they say, and the customer, and then the company says, first of all, what's your name? Okay, my name's Nick. And then the company says, where are you calling from, Nick? And you say, well, I'm calling from this property. And they go, okay, now how can we help you, Nick? And they say, well, look, I actually want to talk to you about this issue that I reported last week. And you go, okay, got to spend a little bit of time. I'm going to put you on hold, come back to you. Okay, I can see this was updated. If you compare that kind of flow with something where all the data flows very freely and is very interconnected, you might call up again, you're welcomed either via digital assistant or via an actual human operative, and they say, hey Nick, how you doing? I can see you're calling from 10 Acacia Avenue. That's great. Oh, are you calling about the electricity issue you just called about? Just to let you know, I see that you have had some issues there, but the supply's on their way. And actually, when you look at the level of interconnected systems and data that it needs to take to deliver that second experience rather than the first experience, it's a lot of work, right? It's a lot of work. It's a lot of connecting different systems, APIs. Some of these systems don't have APIs. So in short, I guess the reason why so many companies are struggling to deliver on this kind of interconnected future, because the data is all there, right? The systems are capturing it. We know the data is there. It's just not being linked and it's not being cross-referenced. And therefore the results are often really, really poor. And I think there's probably really two reasons for that. To keep it concise, is that legacy systems were built kind of before this world of interconnected devices and interconnected systems. You've got these behemoth legacy platforms that just don't do a good job at pushing and pulling information out of them. That's part of it. And then also, I think there's just, certainly when you scale up an enterprise, there's such a massive lack of focus on technical teams. In short, the technology function for loads of enterprises, especially if we look at local councils, which is a lot of our client, or FM, is just not there. It should be a much bigger part of their business, and because of that, the interconnectivity between systems, between business units really struggles, because the system should really do the heavy lifting of sharing data and make sure it's available at the right time. Does that answer your question?
Well, it does, and it brings me on nicely. In fact, I put a story up today from a report that showed that something like 60% of CTOs say that technology is not aligned with business objectives and business processes. That CTOs basically are feeling left out, and that basically at the boardroom level and further down, that the businesses aren't really engaging with technology to actually help them achieve their business aims and ambitions. I mean, you're talking there about interconnectivity and all these systems not kind of working together. I go back to the days of the transition from analog telephony and communication into the digital world, and talking to people about voice over IP and apps and all this kind of stuff. Everyone was, over a period of, this is 20 years ago, was piling into integration and making it with screen popping and making all the CRM stuff work. So 20 years later, they're still not getting it.
Yeah, I mean, that is the reality, right? We're in this world of, and part of that is because I think there's a vested interest in some of the existing existing incumbent players in the technology space to make it harder to pull data on and off, because they have historically been used to having one customer, and then the customer says, oh, we need X. Oh, we'll go and build X because we can charge you for it, rather than, oh, we have a partner who we can connect you to. And I think that's I think you're going to see in the future, the tech companies that win are going to be the ones that don't try and do it all themselves, and they just focus on making sure the customer is able to utilize their data and get the most from their data.
Good stuff. You specialize in artificial intelligence and Internet of Things data management. But can we start with digital assistants? What are they, and how do they connect to other areas of business?
Yeah. So our kind of vision, or certainly when I founded the company, our kind of vision is that every company is going to have their own digital assistant in the future, and I do believe that. Let's say you walk into a facility, you walk into a company. Whatever form this digital assistant pops, where maybe it's a QR code, or maybe it's you're calling up, or maybe it's an AR, an augmented reality assistant welcoming you into the lobby, whatever it is. But it's going to have the full data, and it's going to be connected to all the information about the company. It's going to be able to welcome you and say, hey, welcome, Tom. See, you came here before. Do you want me to show you up to the meeting room that you were in last time? Because I see you've got a meeting with X or whatever. And again, it's that interconnected, it's that data that flows between all the different interactions that you've had with this company. That assistant's going to be able to pull, it's going to be able to know, and it's going to be able to kind of really enhance your interaction with the company. And that's kind of what we're focused on, So our digital assistant is primarily around kind of facilities, but also local government, and really enabling that really kind of deep level of connected conversations. What I mean by that is, we've all been on the chatbots on homepages of websites that have, because it's not connected to the data, because it doesn't have a full understanding of who I am as a customer, it just sees me as someone landing on a web page. It doesn't have any context. It also it's not really connected to any of the data that sits behind the business. So what it ends up is a very shallow, can I do this? Can I direct you towards the FAQs? That's and now I need to wait in queue to speak to an agent because I wasn't able to satisfy my request. And we, on the other hand, have been focusing very much on embedding our platform, connecting it into the relevant data sources, pulling as much of that data in, making it available for our assistants, and really actually providing kind of a proper value add experience. So yeah, look, if you're living in a property and you've got a problem, our assistants will welcome you, and they'll say, hi Tom, is it about the last issue that you had? Because we've got that. And you say, no, it's about a new one. We'll walk you through it, we'll triage it, because we've built all these dialogues around specifically the real estate sector. So we're getting really, really good at kind of triaging issues, making sure we're connected to the right data sets, making sure that we can, I guess, serve the customer in a way that's a very positive interaction, rather than a kind of negative, oh, this is a chatbot, oh, I need to speak to a person. Because ultimately, if you're speaking to a chatbot and a person, you're just burning time across the board, your time, the company's time as well. So that's kind of really what we're about, is giving every company, every one of our clients, their own digital assistant that actually is deeply connected to what they do as a business and saves time, delivers ROI, all that stuff.
So does it require all kinds of bespoke integration to make these sorts of things work? Do you have to kind of muller and mangle people's existing data systems and platforms? Or are you finding that things are becoming increasingly more seamless?
Yes, it's a really good question, and it's kind of like a future we can see. Since we started about 6 years ago, we can see a really clear direction of what's starting to happen. Historically, you're right. We go to a client, and the system they had X system, let's say as a CRM, whatever it is, and the trying to get data off that was incredibly painful. So we'd have to spend a lot of time doing that integration. Would be custom per client, and then we have to map it to our platform, etc. Right. So yeah, in the early days there was a lot of that. As we're going now, every new client that we sign up, we're finding that the requirements for their assistant is almost exactly identical across their kind of their specific business case. Like if they're a council, they deal with the same inquiries as another council does. Surprise. Same with facility management. And I think what we're now seeing, especially even with the system side, is we've got so many integrations with our domain specifically, that we can pretty much go, oh, we've done an integration like that. So we can shortcut a lot of that point. But I think as we move, I think that's only going to get better and easier for us, certainly as we move into kind of the modern world, I guess, or the future modern world. We're going to see some really interesting stuff happen, certainly with AI being able to process much more unstructured data. So not necessarily needing to go in, connect the two systems, the field matching. We can just go, here's a load of unstructured data, and as a customer, you can say, what's going on with my customer inquiry. We can kind of sift through the information that's up against your name and go, okay, this looks like the right thing that you're trying to talk about. So I think you're going to see it's going to become a lot more, the effort to connect different systems and different businesses together is going to be replaced by much more kind of seamless AI. You just connect them and the AI does the work that's typically done by humans to do all that. So I think, yeah, it's going to be quite exciting.
So you mentioned the Internet of Things. The Internet of Things offers many benefits, but it relies on telecoms and data interconnectivity. Is there enough connectivity and bandwidth available? And how do you go about managing all the data that it produces? Because the Internet of Things, if everything's connected, it's a huge amount of data.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a challenge, especially if you look at kind of the idea of the kind of the metaverse or the digital media streaming, and you're going to see, I think this is always the case and has always been the case with hardware and technology, right? The applications for technology are constantly demanding and push the requirements for better technology, better kind of hardware effectively. So that's something throughout history, like if you look at kind of early games designs, right? The earliest games designs struggled so much with what they could actually deliver on screen and on the computers, because they were limited by the hardware. And now we've kind of started to catch up and the experience. But I think, if we look at the metaverse, we are still very far away from giving that whole immersion that everyone would like us to believe is just around the corner. And I think same applies with IoT devices. There's going to be a lot of data flowing around. And I think bandwidth is going to be a problem. We've got things like 5G, all that kind of stuff coming. So I think, ultimately there are technologies to support that, especially when you read, up about various quantum computing, etc. I don't have a massive I don't have a massive fear about what's coming down the road. I'm sure we'll find solutions to all that problem.
It will. These things will take time to develop. Quite often, the promise, appears on the horizon an awful lot. Before the sun actually appears over the horizon, if you see what I mean. Right. So, as you say, these things take time. But unfortunately, the growth of technologies and applications is exponential. So once you can do one thing, you can do three things as a result, and 6 and 8 and 10 as a result of that. But I mean, coming back to the actual nuts and bolts of dealing with organisations, basically selling and promoting the benefits of digitalisation and transformation, and the wonders of all kinds of connectivity. Do you think that it's a failure of will and understanding by the organisation internally, or is it still, you know, a matter that there isn't the killer applications in terms of technology to make it a no-brainer for people to adopt these control and digital data management systems?
What do I think? It's an interesting question. I think it's, like I said, like you speak to most of our clients, they know what needs to be done. They know where they need to get to, and it's totally within the realms of current available technologies to get there. The problem is it's a legacy system point of view. It's very hard to get that data off, and if you imagine, you know, those systems have probably had about 15 years of people kind of customizing them to their specific needs, all that kind of stuff, right? And when you look at that, you go, wow, that's a really big job. That's like, you know, living in your house and going, okay, well, now we need to gut the entire thing. It's a big makeover, it's a big commitment. And especially, and it's an even bigger commitment when you look at some of these companies have teams of like 3 people in IT. It's a big commitment, and it's a big problem. So they start to go to get consultants to help them with that transition, and then you get costs ballooning. And then there's a whole organizational change. So the people that have been working there for the last 15 years, also suddenly now you're telling them they need to do something completely different in a completely different way. So no, I don't think it's an inherent challenge of a technology or anything. I think it's just a matter of under-resourcing that. So I think in answer to that, we're going to see new architectures of platforms that don't heavily rely on one system. It's much more microservice. You don't have to gut the entire house to change one bit. You can just replace the oven because it's easier, and that enables you to kind of, you know, modularly kind of update your technology stack. And I think so you're going to see a lot more modularity in technology stacks going into the future, and you're also going to see, hopefully, organizations pay a lot more attention to the technologies that they run on, because that is ultimately their USP. They don't maybe know it now. They'll tell you that their employees are their USP, but if their employees don't have the data and the information to hand, they will not do a good job when serving customers. They won't. So
it does clearly still come down to a matter of practicalities, as you've eruditely explained, the realities and practicalities of dealing with legacy systems. So clearly, the answer to so many of these things is to build it in from the ground up. Tom, unfortunately, we have run out of time. I know we could be spending a great deal more time talking about this, but it is a core issue for business, because ultimately it is the engine room that essentially runs their business and reports back and all this kind of stuff. We know the benefits of digitalisation, but clearly practical problems remain, and it's down to people like you to sort them out. So Thomas, thank you so much for your time and your insights. I do appreciate it, and I wish you every success in your future endeavours.
Thank you so much, Nick. It's been a pleasure.